Hi, my name is Marty Cormack. I'm on the board of We Bike Rochester, and I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to get started with winter bicycling in Minnesota. For the past 6 years, I've tried to ride as often as I can during the winter in Rochester, Minnesota, and I've learned quite a few things along the way, and have had the help of several of my bicycling friends, in particular Ed Denbo and Paul Kloss. There are a lot of reasons why you would want to ride in the winter. In my case, I enjoy the beautiful scenery and the wildlife. Riding through the woods after newly fallen snow can be as beautiful as anything I've seen. And I am fortunate to be able to see wildlife in the winter. In particular, I've been seeing bald eagles. I recently saw a trumpeter swan. I see white-tailed deer, red-tailed hawks, and lots of geese because I live in Rochester. If you ride in the evenings in the winter, you can enjoy the holiday lights. Getting out every day is a way for me to get fresh air and exercise, which both help my mental and my physical health. Riding a bicycle is always good for the environment, and I try to use it for riding necessary errands. And a few years ago, before I retired, I would ride in the winter to commute to work. And of course, if you have friends who also ride in the winter, you can take up a social ride and meet for coffee afterwards. Obviously, there are challenges to bicycle riding in the winter. The first of which is cold weather. When it's 20 below zero, it's hard to stay warm enough to take a bike ride. But with the right gear, you can take the edge off of those coldest days. There's always the wind chill that is generated by riding a bicycle at 10 to 12 miles an hour, which adds on top of the cold. During the winter, it gets dark early, and so you need to deal with riding in the dark if you commute in the morning and in the evening. Obviously, you have ice and snow to deal with. Hopefully, when you're riding, you have plowed routes to ride. But occasionally, you'll encounter a route that isn't plowed, or in the worst case, a route that the snowplows have actually dumped snow into your path. For example, this photo shows a case where a snowplow dumped a 3-foot pile of snow right on the bicycle path that I was intending to take. So I had to climb over that pile of snow. There's salt and sand that gets applied to the snow in the streets, and that stuff can get into the gears and chain of your bike, which will need you to clean your bike and lubricate it. And then some businesses in public spaces put their bike racks away for the winter. And so sometimes when you're trying to go somewhere and want to lock your bike, the bike rack will disappear. Also, there's some streets and bike lanes that aren't fully plowed in the winter, so they also disappear for the season. One of the most important tricks is to stay warm enough to bike in the winter. The first rule is to dress in layers to keep your core warm. Make sure you have multiple layers on top and on bottom to keep your arms and legs and your torso completely warm. I recommend at least 2 or 3 layers, and more depending on the temperatures. Another trick is to be sure to use the cold weather gear you already have. We all live in Minnesota, and so we've probably gone out in the cold before. So it's very likely your closet already has long underwear and ski pants and other warm sweaters that would work in this situation. Be sure your outer coat is windproof and water resistant. It's very important. If it snows, you might get wet. And if it's windy, you want to definitely break the wind. For your head, it's handy to put a helmet cover on top of your helmet to block the air vents. Helmets are particularly made for warm situations, but with a helmet cover, it helps a lot. You can get a balaclava face mask that covers most of your face and your head, except for your eyes. Depending on your style and your needs, you could try neck gaiters or ear bands. Be sure you have warm gloves, and mittens can be warmer than gloves. And they also make special gloves for bicyclists that would be the combination of a glove and a mitten, as shown in the illustration. You can use hand and toe warmers, either electrical or chemical ones. Be sure you have warm and waterproof boots. You often have to put your feet down in snowy and wet conditions. Again, if you're a ski person, try using your ski gear. For example, a ski helmet and goggles will keep your head warm. Ski gloves are particularly good, and ski pants over your regular clothing is something really good to try during the winter. Experiment. It's okay when you start out if you're a little chilly. You will warm up through exercise. So don't panic if you're a little bit cold at the beginning. And at the same time, don't overdress. If you're totally warm at the beginning and then work up a sweat, that soaking sweat will soak up your clothing, and as soon as you stop or it gets windy, you'll get cold really fast, and that can be dangerous. So be sure to dress correctly. Don't overdress. Your hands and feet will tend to be the first thing to get cold, and so paying special attention to your hands and feet will help you stay comfortable through the ride. Consider having storage bags or panniers on your bike so that you can pack extra clothes to take in case you get cold along the way. And vice versa, if you're too warm, you can lose a layer and store it in your pannier or your bike bags. And the best rule is to use what works best for you. Some of my friends would dress differently than the way I dress, but I dress what works best for me. What bike should you ride in the winter? You shouldn't have to go out and buy an expensive bike just to ride in the winter. You should really try it out before you buy it. In my case, I really ramped up my winter bicycling once I bought a fat bike. But I had borrowed a fat bike before that to see if I really liked it before making the investment. So you want to check your garage for what you have. Do you have a bike that might be suitable already? Try and find one or borrow an older bike. A fat bike works really well. A mountain bike or a gravel bike might work well. Even a hybrid bike with wider tires in it might be something to try out before you spend any money on a winter-specific bike. Fenders and splash guards can keep you cleaner and drier, especially in the freeze-thaw cycle where you'll run into melting snow. If you don't have a back fender, the back of your coat and bottom will get really wet. So make sure you have fenders or splash guards. And again, because of the water with salt and sand that'll get all over your bicycle, be sure that you clean and lubricate your bike, especially right after a sandy or salty ride conditions. In winter, the days are short, and so it's likely there'll be times when you'll have to ride in the dark. And in fact, some of the prettiest times to ride, especially during the holiday season, is in the evening and after dark. So you want to make sure that you can be seen. Also, drivers may be less likely to expect bicycles in winter conditions, so visibility is really important for your safety. When you're riding in the dark, you are required to have lights on the front and the back of your bicycle. Flashing lights are much more visible to others, especially drivers. And if you're going to ride in places like the woods where there is no ambient light at all, be sure that you have a high intensity headlight so that you can see all the obstacles ahead of you. Be sure to wear reflective clothing or a vest to make sure that you are seen. And also be sure that you have the right eyewear on to match the lighting. For example, you definitely need dark sunglasses when riding in a bright sunny day with lots of snow to keep from going snowblind. But conversely, at night, you need to have the right eyewear so that you can see in the dark. When you're riding in the winter, it's important that you know your routes, especially if you're riding for an errand or commuting, because some of the bike lanes and trails are not maintained during the winter. And anytime you get more than 2 to 3 inches of snow on a trail, it is very difficult to ride. The city of Rochester maintains a map that shows which of their trails that they maintain during the winter, and those are shown on red on the map on the side here. You can go to the website on the city of Rochester to get the Park and Rec Parks and Trails winter maintenance map. Also remember that it might take 36 hours or more for some of the maintained routes to get plowed. And so if you have to go immediately after a snowstorm, you may only be able to ride on a street that's been plowed. Sidewalks can be spottily maintained, and so if you're riding on sidewalks in certain areas, it may take a while for the owners to get out there and maintain the sidewalk. And in some places, owners are negligent and their sidewalks don't get maintained very well. As I showed you early in this presentation, it's not uncommon for snowplows to not take into consideration sidewalks and bicycle lanes. And so you can't expect that a snow pile will get plowed into the bike lane or onto your bike path. And so you have to be prepared for that. You may have to dismount and climb over a pile of snow. And if an area is supposed to be maintained and it's obviously not, you can report those deficiencies to the city, and those will get taken care of in a reasonable length of time. If you're riding a bicycle in the winter, you inevitably have to deal with ice and snow conditions. As I said before, it's very difficult to ride in fresh snow that's more than 2 to 3 inches in depth. If there was 4 or 5 inches of fresh powder, even with a fat bike, you're not going to be able to get through it very well. So you're going to have to adjust for that situation and wait for your route to get plowed. If there's a lot of freezing and thawing, or if there's an ice storm, you're going to encounter a lot of conditions that might be very icy. When conditions are exceptionally icy, studded tires are a must. They won't give you really great traction, but they will keep you upright in icy conditions. But if there's only occasional ice along your way, even without studded tires, there are techniques you could use to stay upright over the ice. The most important thing is to maintain your speed and direction when crossing a patch of ice. If you were to turn, accelerate, or brake on ice, you very likely are going to go down. So be very careful. Maintain your speed and direction, and you should make it over the ice patch. And it's most important that your front tire stability is more important than your rear tire when crossing ice. If your front tire turns on the ice, you're very likely to go down. However, if you are an experienced bicyclist, if your rear tire fishtails a little bit, it's not as likely that you'll go down. But you don't want to fishtail a lot. Just make sure you keep as much stability on both tires as you can. Over the last few years, using advice and help from some of my friends who bike in the winter, I've added to the techniques and gear and equipment that I use that makes my winter riding even more enjoyable. The most significant improvement I made was when I upgraded to studded tires, which made the number of days that I could ride increase significantly so that I could get through snowy and icy conditions. One of the first things I added was a helmet cover to my helmet, which kept my head a lot warmer. I have lights on both my helmet and my handlebars. The light on my handlebars shows where I'm pointed on my bicycle, but if I need to look side by side in very dark areas, the light on my helmet follows my eyes and I can see around the corner or see to the side. The technique I learned this year was I purchased battery-powered heated gloves and socks, and that makes a very significant improvement in my comfort for longer rides in colder weather. And my feet and hands, I get home and my feet and hands are not numb. One of my friends showed me a particular helmet instead of goggles, a ski helmet and goggles, that really keep my head much warmer and my eyes and face much warmer. Without the ski goggles, my eyes would water up a lot and I would have to blow my nose frequently on a ride. Once I purchased my first set of pogies, in my case bar mitts, I was able to keep my hands significantly warmer and comfortable during a ride, especially for braking and shifting. The bar mitts I have go over the handlebars, over the gear shifts, and over the brake levers. I'm able to control everything with my gloved hand that are inside the neoprene shell of the bar mitts. You might want to consider platform pedals and insulated hiking boots. In fact, on my gravel bike, I've added flat pedal adapters so that I can use my warm boots in riding my gravel bike during the winter. And it's important to experiment with different gear and equipment. Talk to your friends who ride in the winter. They may have some suggestions I haven't included here. Don't be afraid to experiment and try things out. Some things will work really well for you. Some of the suggestions won't work so well for you. You have to experiment and try what works best for you. If you have questions, please visit our website, WeBikeRochester.com, or make a query and send an email to we.bike.rochester@gmail.com. Thank you very much. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and please enjoy bicycling in winter. Thank you.